All right, we're starting section 2.7 on consecutive integers. And this is very different from the previous sections. In the previous sections, we were learning how to simplify expressions and distribute negative signs. But here we're going back to translating equations into, or translating sentences into equations, but we're doing it with consecutive integers. Now you've got to understand what these two terms mean. That's really important in order for you to really grasp this concept. So we're going to start with integers. Make sure you know what that is. If you think of a number line, if you were to number all the tick marks, like if you could extend this number line infinitely in both directions, and you would label all the little tick marks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, -1, -2, -3, -4, these are the integers. All right, so we're talking about this group of numbers. Now we've got to go to the word consecutive. Consecutive means one right after the other. Like consecutive days of the week would be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Consecutive months, January, February, March. Consecutive numbers or consecutive integers would be like 1, 2, 3. This is 3 consecutive integers. Or -5, -4, -3, right? I can be on the negative side, 5, 4, 3. They're still one right after the other. Or I can go -1, 0, 1, 2. It doesn't have to be 3. It could be 2 or 4 or some other number. But the important point is that these are all one apart. 2 is 1 away from 1. 3 is 1 away from 2. -4 is 1 away from -5. 0 is 1 away from -1. These are 1 apart. All right, 1 apart. Now, consecutive even integers would be 2, 4, 6, 8. Right? 4 is the next consecutive even integer to 2. 6 is the next consecutive even integer to 4. You might have 10, 12, 14, or you could go in the negative direction. You could have -6, -4, -2. These consecutive evens are all 2 apart from each other. 2 apart. -4 is 2 away from -6. 14 is 2 away from 12. All right, now we're going to look at consecutive odd integers. That would be like 1, 3, 5. Or -13, -11, -9. It could be -1 and 1. So odd integers, now remember, odd integers can't be divided by 2. That's what makes them odd. And 3 is the next consecutive odd integer up from 1. -9 is the next consecutive odd integer up from -11. But how far apart are these from each other? Well, they're still 2 apart. They're just like consecutive even integers. Consecutive odds are 2 away from each other. 2 itself is an even number, but that doesn't matter. This number can be even. This just means how far apart they are. So note that even and odds are the same number apart. They look exactly the same. Now, let's take that information and use it to write an equation. The sum, I know I didn't give you much time to copy some of these phrases, so you might have had to pause the video to write some of this down. The sum of 3 consecutive integers is 74. Period. Now we have a sentence here. We're going to translate into an equation. That's how you're going to do all of these. Translate into an equation. There's two pieces you need. If you remember way back in section 1.6, you had some word problems where you had to define your unknowns and then write an equation. Remember how there were problems where you had a total and then problems where you had to translate the second sentence? It's kind of like that. So let's go ahead and define our unknowns. We have three consecutive integers. So we're going to go like this. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Those are their names. We're going to always start with an N on the first one. And then it doesn't say even or odd, it just says they're consecutive. So we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Numbers that are consecutives are 1 apart. So if the first one is N, the next one must be N plus 1. That is 1 away from N. The third one must be 1 away from N plus 1. So it's going to be N, it's N plus 1, but that's N plus 2. So each is 1 away from the one before it. You have to do this part of it to find the unknowns. That's what we're going to call this. Define unknowns. Okay, and now the equation. Well, sum means to add. So n plus 1 plus n plus 2 would be the sum of these three consecutive integers. N plus 1 plus n plus 2 equals 74. Pretty easy. But I do want you to simplify. So 1, 2, there's 3 n's added. So n plus n is 3n. Number adds to number, plus 3 equals 74. Now on your homework, this is what you have to write. You've got to do this part and this part. You don't have to solve it, so that's the good thing. Now let me turn over this page here. Let's see, I'm going to use this page. Okay, example 2. They do get trickier, but we're just going to start with the more basic ones for a minute here. The sum of 2 consecutive odd, there's a new word, integers, is off the paper. No, is 75. All right, let's define them now. We have to define our unknowns. There's 2 of them. So here's some important things to know. We've got odd and we've got 2. 2 of them means there's number 1 and number 2. There's actually 2 numbers. They're odd and they're consecutive. We always make the first one an n. Odd integers are, I wish I wouldn't have turned that page now. Let me move this. Odd integers are 2 apart. So n plus 2. That's why you got to watch this word odd. It's going to tell you what you have to put for this number here. And then we want the sum, so it's n plus 2 is equals 75. But you can skip this step and just go 2n plus 2 equals 75 computer, my laptop is very old and it's making weird noises and it sounds like a jet engine. Okay, example 3. All right, we're going to jump here. The product of two I'm just going to abbreviate that, integers is 12. Let's make it negative 12. You're going to see some negative numbers here. That doesn't matter. But what you got to really watch for is this word, how many there are, and there's no even or odd here. So those are the 2 keywords. I probably should have underlined some there too. All right, we've got 2 of them. So number 1, number 2. Always make the first one n, and they're just consecutive. It doesn't say even or odd. So consecutives are 1 apart. The second number is going to be n plus 1. Now we want their product. Product means multiply, so you have to take n times n plus 1, just like this, is equals negative 12. That's the answer. And these are the pieces that you need to show in your work. Same for this problem. You need to show this, you need to show this. What I don't want you to do, but what you're going to be tempted, or some of you will be tempted, to try to multiply this out, like distribute. But don't do it for these problems because you don't know how to do it correctly. Chances are, if I ask you to do it, and I usually do in class, what I get would be something like 2n plus n or something like that. That is incorrect because n times n is n squared plus n. We don't want to mess with n squareds right now, so don't try to distribute it. Example, oh, I'm at 12 already, darn it. I think I'm okay. Example 4, we're going to try a harder one. The product of 2 consecutive even integers is 5 less than twice their sum. You know what? I probably should have stopped after the last example because I'm already at 13 minutes in this video. I'm going to pause it and do a part 2.